Live. Perfect. Welcome to another edition of ENTP Life's live editions. So, at this point in time, if you're just joining the show, actually nobody joins this quickly, so we'll just wait until people start to show up and get into some sort of housekeeping, general information. Hey, 2 people are here. Do you hear me, guys? Am I coming in clearly? Message me. Say, yes, we got you loud and clear, just so I know that I'm not, empty. And also, as you enter, just make sure that you like this video, share with anybody else that you think will get value out of it. That's one of the best ways that you can give back to the channel is slapping likes on it, leaving comments, interacting with the content. Pudge, what's going on? Israel, yep, everything good, perfect, thank you. Thank you for participating. Hello, Katie. It's important for you guys to interact with the content. It lets YouTube and the algorithm know that you guys are finding value from it. Obviously, liking, watch time, commenting, interacting with the content, sharing the content are all things that YouTube wants you to do. That helps me out. I really appreciate it when you guys help me out. So that's number 1. Number 2, for anybody who wants to have a private call with me one-on-one, I am doing live consultations on real estate, healthcare businesses, and then any other kind of, coaching, whether it's how do I approach living globally, or I'm just graduating from college and I'm trying to set the right financial roadmap. Whatever it is that you feel that you might need a mentoring call from, I do get a lot of requests for mentoring. Best way to do so, book a call. I should have a link down below. If not down below, you could go to my Instagram page or entplife.com you go to the page and it'll show you exactly what you could register for. I find them to be pretty satisfying, me being able to give advice and people actually getting value out of those calls. So definitely, if you're interested in talking to me privately, you want to talk about finances, personal things that you may not want to talk about here, do so. If you have questions, use these lives as an opportunity to ask your question for free without any sort of fee. I try to get to all the questions as they come up. This week's video was talking about me living globally and actually kind of going further into this goal of mine to live an international lifestyle. As the backstory goes, went to Thailand, got to see how far the US dollar went. You really get a sense, like going to the Caribbean, going to like where most Americans travel, those tourist zones get built up quickly and are pandering to the US client. And because of that, all the prices are sort of adjusted for that. Because one, the demand for that real estate, the demand to build, develop, employ, all the costs are, usually American companies or foreign companies, and they're driving values up and they need to recoup their money somehow. So they need to also kind of collect on the customer. So you don't really get to see the power of the dollar. However, you go to Mexico City, you go to Guadalajara, you go to Merida, right? In those cities, or even downtown Cancun, whatever, you go to those cities and then you get to see how far the dollar goes when you're looking at cost of living, when you're looking at labor costs, that sort of stuff. So it wasn't apparent to me in like my early years traveling to resorts in Dominican Republic, traveling to Cancun, Mexico, Rosarito Beach, those sort of places. I didn't really see that, right? Or going on a cruise, those sort of things, you don't really get exposed to that. Because even at the cruise ships, they dock into the cruise zone and everybody just milks you for your money and sends you on to the next destination. But I went to Thailand, and in Thailand, they don't really cater to the US tourist. They're catered to kind of like the South Asian tourist and the Pacific Islanders and the Australians. And because of that, even in the tourist zones, the prices aren't as inflated because most of the people who are visiting aren't from high means, right? You have a lot of Indians going to Thailand for vacation, and the average salary in India doesn't match the average salary in Australia, or it doesn't match the average salary in the United States. It's not even close. So the prices are adjusted to what is acceptable for the local clientele. But that was the first time that I saw a developed city, developed tourist location where I could get a meal for $1 or $2, right? A full meal that in the US, that same meal will cost me 5 to 10 times as much, right? If I go to a Thai restaurant, or even a basic Thai restaurant in New York City, I might pay $9 for pad Thai. Meanwhile, I'm paying $1.50 in Thailand for the same level or same quality of food. So I got to see that, and I was like, whoa, this is interesting. And then I looked at the real estate costs. Of course, I was investing in real estate at that time. I saw what the prices were, what the rental rates were, and I was like, what am I doing living in New York City, right? And that was like the genesis of the idea of, well, if I could just live in cities like Thailand or Bangkok or Phuket, those are the places I went at the time. I was like, if I could live here. This is a proper city. And it will cost me a fraction of what I pay in the US, and my lifestyle would be pretty good. However, I would need to make sure that I'm earning in USDs or US dollars, mainly because the wage differential is substantial in those countries. So even if I were to relocate, find a means of work, whether it was business or whatever, everything is, again, my revenue is going to be adjusted to like the local. If I open a restaurant, I'm not going to make money. If I open a hotel, a pretty decent 4-star hotel is still renting for $60 or $70 a night. So there's major construction costs there. So it's like I would need to farm my money out of the US. At the time I was stock trading, I was like, well, stock trading can do it because then I could work from anywhere. My healthcare staffing company was in place at the time, but it was still kind of early. I had a few employees. It was kind of teetering profit-wise. I had a few pieces of real estate, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm still, at that time, still very much dependent on my CAT scan job, which I was working weekends and evenings. All the money that I was making from these other ventures were getting kind of recycled into the business for growth. So I was like, man, if I ran this business, internationally, I would, I could draw from it and live a good lifestyle, but not cripple the company. So that was one idea, kind of like reducing my cost of living, and my living standards wouldn't suffer with that reduction of pay, right? Because it'll be equal. So then that was the idea. But I was like, man, Thailand is so freaking far. And I was like, I wouldn't want to be, 20 hours away from my business or my real estate. I had no property managers at the time. It's like, what am I going to do if there's a boiler issue or a fire or something like that? I'm too far to respond. But it stayed in the back of my mind. So I would say like maybe from that point, which is like 2011, 2012 time frame, maybe even 2020, it was around that time. Like during the Great Recession, people were still traumatized. It took like the next time that I saw another place like that was in Lima, Peru. And I went to Lima, Peru in 2016. So it was about 5 years before I saw another place that really captured the same, like, captured me in the same way, in that I was able to live at a fraction of the cost of the United States or New York City, but equivalent lifestyle. So I went to Lima. I went to Lima with my boy Ricardo, and I spent maybe about a week there. I went to one of their food festivals, right? A little bit of a foodie, so we went to this food festival and got to stay in like the nicest part of town, which is Miraflores. And if you guys Google Miraflores, I'll just put it right in here. Miraflores, Peru. Modern development, nice condos, parks, coastlines, beautiful. And all of the top restaurants that are in Lima are there. So the food festival is there. All the top chefs are participating. It's like If you think of Restaurant Week in New York City or anything like that, all the top chefs, top restaurants are competing with like these fixed price menus, tasting experiences, really showcasing, because they know everybody who's coming to town is a food journalist, blogger, or something along those lines, or just lovers of food. So it's like, hey, here's an opportunity to come to my city, enjoy our food culture. So it's a whole event. And again, I go to a restaurant, higher end restaurant. We're talking about something that would easily run me $100 for few cocktails, 3 courses in New York. Easy, and that's quite easy to achieve in New York. So like, okay, I'll give you some points of reference. You go to a decent sit down spot in New York City, right? Even let's call it like a typical sit down Italian place. You go there, you're gonna get a glass of wine for about $9 to $15, right? Depending on what you get and what they're offering. Maybe as high as $17 per glass. A beer might cost you 7 to, once you start inching above 10, it gets ridiculous. But we're going to call it $7 to $10 for a beer. So I'm looking at this menu in one of the highest rated restaurants, and the beer is 7 sols, well, however you call it. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but 7 sols, right? And the sol to the dollar is 3 to 1. Right? At least that was what it was then. So let's look at what that is now. Sol to USD. So it's 4 to 1 now. Yeah, thanks to COVID. So it's 4 to 1. So imagine you go to a restaurant and one beer is 7 sols. So it's like kind of price adjusted, so it's 7 to 11 sols. So you're talking about $2 to $3 for a beer in one of the top rated restaurants in that city. And then maybe your whole meal costs you 100 sol, right? The same thing, your beers, your cocktails, your wines, your appetizer, entree, and a dessert. Bam, you spent 100 sol, but that's $33, right? And I was like, what the hell am I doing living in New York City, right? As a person who enjoys going out to eat, we're talking about Ashford and Gaston's restaurants, Lamar, what's this other dude? He's on Netflix. I can't remember his name, but his restaurant. You're talking about $100 gets you, 100 Peruvian dollars, sols, gets you, up to a Michelin star rated restaurant and like a really good time, right? We're not talking about like, okay, just a walk-in, no reservation sort of spot. We're talking about maybe you need to book, a month in advance, that level. So even if we were to compare apple to apples, those levels of restaurants in New York City will run you 200 to as high as 500 for a tasting, right? And we're talking about paying 100 sols or $35 or $40, right? It's to me, it's absolutely, it was like mind blowing. And the cool thing about being in South America is that it's not as far to get back to New York, right? Where my business, where my money was concentrated. So I was like, man, South America ain't that bad, man. I can live here. And I remember saying that. I even went back to my ex and I was like, hey man, I think I would live here. Would you move with me? It's like Thailand, and as far as costs are concerned, but it's more familiar as far as culture, language, right? Spanish is written the same way. Most of us in bigger cities have some exposure to Spanish due to school or Spanish-speaking friends and colleagues. So it's not a completely foreign place. Same gods, same, a lot of the same holidays. They celebrate Christmas, etc. So you can adjust or kind of adapt easier to a South American city like Lima than you can to Bangkok, in my opinion, right? That's just what I think. Yeah, $100, not the bare minimum. I wouldn't say the bare minimum, man. You can still go to the chicken wing spot, get some chicken wings and fried rice for a few dollars. But as far as if you're looking to have like a good time, date night, entertain somebody, yeah, $100 is kind of like your standard run of the mill. You might, if you're getting cocktails and food, you're definitely gonna tap into the $100 range. You go out for dinner and a movie, I mean, that might set you back, 200, 250, right? Easily. So, that's you're absolutely right, KD. And it goes higher, but just for the standard $100, what do you get? So it's almost the same. And like, all right, that would be considered $100 night, an expensive dinner for the locals, because somebody might be making $600 a month in Lima or $700 a month. To spend $100 on a dinner is kind of like, should I really do that with my $600 a month earning? So if you were to take somebody who's earning $6,000 a month in a city like New York, take home $6,000 a month, and they were to turn around and drop $500 even on a Friday night dinner, that's kind of a special day, right? That's somebody's birthday, proposal, something's happening that day to drop $500 on a dinner for two. So it's kind of the same logic there. But if you're earning in US dollars and you have the money for it, like spending $50 for this restaurant is nothing. Spending $100 at the 3-star Michelin spot or the most expensive restaurant, you might do an 11-course, 15-course tasting. That might run you $125, $130 US dollars. And that would be insane for someone down there, because they're going to be spending like 500 souls on a dinner. And they're like, why would anybody do something like that? Right? But that's like just for comparison sakes. So, that was the first time that my eyes got opened to the power of the US dollar in a location that was more comfortable for me. Not going to Asia, Southeast Asia, where language, customs, gods, religions, everything is different. But going to, the quote unquote Americas and saying, hey, this is familiar. Fine. And then after that, I started going to more South American cities. I went to Cartagena, Colombia. I went to Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Medellin, Colombia, Bogota. And that same experience that I had in Miraflores, Lima, Peru, replicated in all those cities. And I started to look into more cities, Buenos Aires, Santiago, whatever the big cities are down in South America. It was consistent that, hey, you're not sacrificing so much in your infrastructure. There's subways, there's public transportation, there's internet, there's all the creature comforts that you would expect from any world city is there, except the cost of living is so much less, right? There's also bigger gaps in wealth. There's a clearer wealth divide. Like, I think the middle class in the United States, that affords them a pretty good lifestyle. It's comfortable here if you're middle class, even if you're poor or, under the poverty line. Being poor here and being poor in Lima, it's two different levels of poor. It's completely different. But what gets you into the upper class and wealthy class in those South American cities and the lifestyle that associates that, the bar is very, very low, in my opinion. Right? The bar is very, very low, in my opinion. And for people who want to take advantage of that global arbitrage, that how far your US dollars or your euros or your pounds take you, right? South America is probably one of the best areas to be in from that perspective. So once that clicked for me, it was like I said, I was 2016 that I went to Peru. And then it was like back-to-back trips, back. Like, I got to see more of South America. And it just confirmed it for me. And then the thinking became, what if I cycle through, because each one of those countries are going to have their own visa requirements, right? Maybe you could do 90 days with a 90-day extension, that sort of thing. And I started to think, okay, all right, I'm going to have to bounce around a few of these countries, right? If I want to live in South America, I'm going to have to do 90 days in Colombia, 90 days in Brazil, 90 days in Peru, maybe 90 days in Ecuador, and then circle back around, or Argentina, whatever, Uruguay. and I could get this rhythm going. But then I got to make sure that my companies, my assets, the things that I've invested in the United States, spin off the cash that I want and can function independently of me, right? Where I don't necessarily need to be there, boots on the ground, supervising the staff. So everything started to change from 2016 till now, where I was like, all right, I'm making more money. Businesses, I think in 2016, my home care business was probably doing about 4 million in revenue, right? So things started to get a little more real, 4 or 5 million around there. And I was able to afford to hire more staff, more, improve staff, because some of my early employees were not the best. So improving the quality of staff, improving our systems, getting to a point where things were less dependent on me. And after a certain point, like now I'm pretty removed from the day-to-day operations of my, primary home care business. I'm heavily involved in the newer ones because at this point they need that attention. But even the infrastructure that I'm building for these newer ones aren't Carl heavy, right? We're hiring proper support from the beginning. It costs more and there's a bigger burn in the beginning, but then the system doesn't depend on me. And in the agencies that we're looking to acquire, again, the infrastructure is there. So making the investment, buying that business, owning that business, it spins off cash, but I don't necessarily have to be in the operator seat, right? So everything kind of started to shift from 2016 to now. So that's like 5 years of adjustment, investing more. And then I started, since I'm making more money in home care, pushing that money into real estate, as frequently as possible. First doing 2 deals a year, 3 deals a year, 4 deals a year, 8, 15. So as I was getting more money, I started pushing more money down into real estate. And a portion of what I invested in, I fix and flip, some of it I kept, most of it I kept, some of it I sold just for operational cash. And that's the logic there. So now, got a pretty sizable portfolio of real estate, have a manager in place, have had managers in place now for about 3 years. I started to offload property management for me to support staff. That support staff works in South America. So it's less expensive for me and takes less away from the cash flow. The home care companies, the primary one does its thing. And those are the 2 big pieces of what I've built so far. Now the other businesses generate and spin off cash, as they do. And even the smaller ones, remember my first goal was $3,500 a month passively. That's long and behind me. So when we're looking at even the smaller operations, right? If I just, made my money off of YouTube, I think I'm making like $700 a month off of YouTube streams, right? If I was a single person who was living fairly frugally, I could live a decent middle-class life as a single person in South America. Like it's possible, right? Rent a pretty humble apartment, have money for food, transportation, entertain myself every now and then. That's possible for $700 a month. So that's probably and that's direct income from YouTube, right? What I make now in the ENTP Life brand is much more, but it's, a slice of what I make. So everything has been more towards building and facilitating to a point where I don't need to be there. And I also chose South America because in South America, from Medellin, Colombia to Fort Lauderdale is about 3 hours. Fort Lauderdale to New York is 2.5 to 3 hours as well. Medellin to New York is 5. So I was like, you know what? Out of all these cities that I really like I said, I like Lima, I like Medellin, I like Cartagena, but it's it's more of a weekend city. Rio de Janeiro, I love. Sao Paulo, not so much. So when I was looking at all them, I was like, the most conveniently located for me to be able to scramble to the city if I needed to my Fort Lauderdale operation or my New York City operations, Medellin. There's directs from Medellin, Colombia to Fort Lauderdale, to Miami, to New York City, to Newark, New Jersey. So I could get in and out in a day commute, right? If I need to go to Fort Lauderdale round trip in 1 day, because I'm going to go there, attend some meetings, close some business, come back. I could do so in one day. I could really push it for New York because like they have that red eye flight. So I could take the red eye on Avianca into New York City, get to New York City, crack of dawn, handle my business, turn back around on one of the flights in the afternoon or maybe the evening back to South America. So I was like, this is perfect for me. It has the right balance of culture, population of 4 million people, cool people, good cuisine, all the creature comforts that I would want. And like I said, it's probably a third to a quarter of my cost of living for actually an improved quality of life by comparison. So, that kind of gives you the background as to why and how I did it. And for those of you who are curious or interested in doing the same, like I said, you could always book a session with me and plan how to do that. But really, the first thing that you need to do is decide how much money do I need to do this for the lifestyle that I want, right? Like I said, if you're comfortable, if you're already a single bachelor, you live alone, you live in a studio apartment, like Yusuf said, I just live in a bachelor pad. If you're that, and you're not a big spender, you're not a flashy person, you could, in South America, I think, to be really comfortable, in my opinion, you would need at least $1,000 a month. Would put you as a single person to pretty comfortable, right? As a family, I would say $2,500 would cover a family. And by family, I mean for 2 adults, 2 children. I think you'll do fine between, decent place to live, food, your typical creature comforts, maybe schooling if you do like an American or English school, $2,500, maybe $3,000. And if you want a little more creature comfort, you just inch that up by a few $100s because it's not going to cost you that much. But once you know, hey, this is the lifestyle I want to live, then you can go to numbio.com, you can go to nomadlist.com and really look at the numbers to live there and say, okay, if I want to live, let's just say you're retired military, and your payment is $2,200 a month, right? And you're single, you're going to be just fine in all of South America on $2,200 as a single person. So you can then look at, okay, what sort of apartment can I get? What city do I want to be in? What are the cost of living on all of those sites? And you'll get an indication as to how much you need to make. But if you're starting this plan from scratch and you don't have any investments, you don't have any passive income, there's going to be another pathway for you to get to that point where you can retire or live off of, this income from the United States. And then the level that you want to live at is going to be dictated by how much you earn. And then the plan is going to adjust to the level that you want to live at. So, that's something that I want to talk to people about more because I find it so fascinating, right? That if I was 19 years old again or 21 years old again, single, and somebody said, yo, you could live really good in South America as a single man on $3,000 a month, then I probably would have gone in a completely different direction. But I would have been like, word, I could do that. Okay. And my entire strategy would be, how do I make $3,000 a month from the US to live there? It might have been 3 Airbnb apartments. Done. Mission accomplished. It might have been just, passive stock trading, right? On, I don't know, $30,000 of cash. I would probably be able to spin off $3,000 a month. So if, those 2 things would have been what I thought, then I would have been thinking about so many ways to earn my money from these South American cities at that point, right? And I just didn't have that knowledge, so I wasn't thinking about it. But if I find it fascinating that if I were to have like a young mind, I was like, yo, I'm down for this, I would certainly like get off on the idea that, hey, I got this person out of that American nightmare of, kill yourself in student loans, get a master's degree, get a professional degree, finish with $250,000 in debt, then start earning $90,000 a year, and you're living kind of broke because you have all that debt. You're working a lot, and then the okay, you got to work hard in this firm, build to partner, build to VP, and then eventually you'll hit the six-figure mark, the magical six figures, and then you're 40 years old, married with a house that you paid too much for, still got your student loan debt, right? And you're like, yo, this is so, what the hell am I doing, right? So if I could save a few youngsters from that, or people who still have like aspirations to make more money and say, hey, maybe if you did this startup in another city, you could afford to get scale with less money. You may not have to take as big of an investor check. You may not have to give as much equity up. There's so many pathways for so many people. So, if I'm able to kind of show people, hey, especially in today's marketplace, today where you can work anywhere in the world with a computer, with a cell phone, and an internet connection. You need electricity, internet, and you are technically employable, right? Anywhere on the planet. So what the hell, why are you confined to this fictitious border that is your country or is your state or city, whatever, you're clinging to as far as your identity and what is home? I mean, the whole world is your home to a certain extent. And as an American, as somebody who has a passport that allows them to go wherever, as an English speaker, as someone who has, at least a high school education, with those three things, you're armed with everything that you need to get the hell out of here and live a better life for a margin of, a fraction of the price. And that's kind of my thinking. I think, I tell my friend, I have a group chat with my friends that I travel with mostly, and I'm always telling them, yo, when are you getting out of the machine? And, the hesitation is, well, I don't know if I'm going to make the right amount of money. And, they're just not, it's not an easy decision to make. Right. But I think if you clear the money hurdle and you say, man, here's a plan to eliminate the money doubts. And if you're making if you're single making $3,500 in Medellin, I guarantee you're going to save $2,000 a month easily. Just stores. So $2,000 a month savings is way more than most six-figure earners save in a year. Right? Most Americans don't even have a month's worth of savings if they were to lose their job. So a six-figure earner in New York City paying a 30% tax rate, that's 70 grand. After their $70,000, they're saving 24,000, 25,000 out of that a year. Absolutely not. Most of them are maxing out their 401k. This is just not happening, right? So when I look at that, and I say, hey, if you made $3,500 a month, you would be able to save $2,000 a month, which would allow you to travel more frequently, which would give you more money to invest. Even in that country, $24,000 in one shot is a lot of money to develop a business that cash flows or buy a business that cash flows. And you would be able to live that same lifestyle in like 75% of the world on just $3,500. So if I'm able to help people build that out, man, I'd be thrilled. I'm going to go to some questions now because I'm seeing some comments and I don't want to be ignored. AS, yeah, you could live decent with the 700. I agree. If you're still here, where do you have experience? Like, how do I say this? Where have you been where are you from? Are you from one of these cities? Or where have you seen, like, what's your point of reference for that? Just if you can name the city that you're talking about. Sheldon, this is one of my buddies in the travel crew. Why Medellin and not Sao Paulo? Aren't both big cities? Okay. Sao Paulo is 20 million mofos, right? 20 million. Okay. And Medellin is 4 million. Sao Paulo takes me like 8 hours from Miami, 11 hours from New York City, right? It's just too far. And Sao Paulo, I don't know, man. I don't like Sao Paulo as a city. It's just like big urban sprawl. Just like I don't really like Bogota, right? So Bogota and Sao Paulo are more similar in that they're the big city, the like business center of the country, more people, more crowded, more disparity in wealth. Um, it's just not for me. I like cities. I'm more of a city person. I'm not like a rural liver. Um, so I like cities, but the big cities are usually not the most interesting, right? Look at the United States, right? I personally, as an East Coast city, I really like Charlotte, North Carolina. It's not the biggest city on the East Coast, right? You got New York City, you got Boston, you got Atlanta, you have DC. You have DC is kind of cool as a city. It's the proper city state, whatever. Um, you have Atlanta, then down into Florida, you got Jacksonville, you got Fort Lauderdale. Here you got Miami, Orlando, Tampa. So I like Tampa. I like it here. I like Charlotte, North Carolina, and they're not the biggest cities on the coast. New York City is not my favorite. LA is not my favorite, but San Diego's a cool city, in my opinion, right? So, when you look at the big cities on the West Coast, you got Seattle, you got Portland, Sacramento, San Francisco, Oakland, and then you got LA, San Diego, and maybe there's someone in between that I miss. Forgive me, California people. But out of all those cities, I like San Diego the best. Weather is good, people are chill, it's not as busy. That's just me. So Medellin is kind of like that in comparison to Bogota and in comparison to Sao Paulo. And the cost of living is cheaper in Medellin than Sao Paulo. Okay, so your question is, what do I mean by a weekend city when I reference Medellin? So Medellin, from a tourism perspective, is a weekend city. So people from the States, people from other cities within South America, people from Colombia itself that are going to Medellin to hang out for the weather, for the vibe, they usually arrive on Thursday, leave on Sunday, right? Kind of like New Orleans or Miami, right? When people travel, or Vegas, right? People don't go to Vegas for Monday to Sunday. They getting in Friday night. If they don't die by Sunday or Monday, they're out, right? Wednesday to Sunday is even a stretch for a city like Las Vegas or New Orleans. So when I say weekend city, referencing Medellin or Medellin, however, I'm sorry, forgive me for my pronunciation. I'm just a gringo. When people visit there, it's for the weekend, whether they're Americans or they're locals. So the population goes up a little bit. The nightlife starts to crank up Thursday, Friday night. You're not gonna have that same energy level on Tuesday. And obviously most cities are like that for tourism, but it's noticeable in Medellin, especially if you're running a tourism operation. Like when I was running my Airbnb down there, our Airbnb was like 60%, 65% booked. Weekends were booked. It was that Monday through Wednesday, that Sunday through Wednesday, heard. So that's what I mean by that. Okay, KD, the quality of life is usually better outside the US. How much income would you need to make the big move to South America? I'm thinking Costa Rica. Okay, so here's an exercise, right? Let me share my screen. This would be cool, right? Share screen. Let's just share the screen. So, we're going to the matrix real quick. So let's go to Nomad List, right? This is the site that I like the visuals of it. Best places to live for a digital nomad. And then we're going to search Costa Rica. I've never been to Costa Rica, actually. So you have Liberia, San Jose, which I would imagine is the capital, Puerto Viejo, Tamarindo, and Santa Teresa. And all of them are fairly expensive, which is rather curious to me, right? And I've heard people say this, like, oh man, Costa Rica used to be very inexpensive and all the gringos drove up the price. And it looks to be that way because for a Central American country, this is pretty pricey. And this nomad number, 2724 per month, or like here, 2724, 2365, $33,000. That's pretty high, in my opinion, for the weather, for the lifestyle. I wouldn't pay that. But that's for a single person, this nomad number. So I don't know. I wouldn't do it. But that's the statistic there. Yeah, I don't know what Liberia is all about, but they're ranking in number one income out of all of the 5 cities or areas. Maybe for vacation, but not to live. Just based on the cost there. Why do you think of Costa Rica? You answered my question. Okay, cool. What's so funny? How did I adapt to the culture of South America? Well, South America is very much the same as America in a lot of ways, that like design is similar. Their holidays are similar as far as like the religious holidays, right? So you're going to get your Christmas, you're going to get your Easter season. The United States is predominantly a Christian country, right? So it feels the same in that regards. I'm not a big religious dude at all. Religion's going to influence the local laws. Religion's going to influence people's behavior. You go to a lot of the Islamic states that like Islam is the religion of state, and there's no alcohol consumption, and there's kind of sometimes gender inequalities, what we would consider inequalities in the United States, that are ingrained or partially misinterpreted due to religion. Right, that's a different debate, but because of that, you're gonna feel different. Like, whoa, this is a little bit of a culture shock. The language you could actually look at it. It doesn't look like Korean. It doesn't look like Chinese. Like you have Korean down here. This dude. This guy with the Korean font, who's clearly talking about himself. You're not dealing with that in regards to like, I don't know what that says, right? Right now I can't look at that and think, what does that say? But if I see the word pharmacia, or I see the word supermercado, right? Supermercado. Mercado. Well, whatever, man. My pronunciation is awful. But that word, I can look at it and say, man, that might mean supermarket, right? So in that regards, it's not so difficult. The pace of living is a lot slower than the American pace. And like the business savvy and the business acumen is very different. Bureaucracy beyond, tolerance for most Americans, even myself, is just like, I filled out a lease application for office space, and on the lease application they request a fingerprint, right? It's like, why am I getting fingerprinted for an office space application, right? It's just what it is, right? It's just stupid bureaucracy. What else? Another thing is this is a little thing, but in In most countries in the world, wait staff at a restaurant waits for you to prompt them. If you go out to dinner, you're getting seated from 7 to maybe 11 p.m. So you show up at 7 o'clock, they expect that you to have that table for the rest of the evening. It's not like you're in a rush that, okay, got this reservation from 7 and we have showtime at 8:30. So, or like Vegas, I'm going to have dinner from 6:30 to 7:30. My Cirque du Soleil show is at 8, from 8 to 10. 10 o'clock, I hit the nightclub, and that's one night, right? $900 later, one night. In most South American countries and most European countries, most world countries, there's not this pressure to like get to the next task, get to the next thing. You take your time with your friends and family at dinner. You talk, you consume a few bottles of wine, you hang out, you go home, you make love. That's what happens, right? That's different. To the point that I had a friend that we went out to a restaurant, and this was probably his first time coming down to Colombia. And this is just tells you how shell-shocked people are by the U.S. and the racial dynamics of the country. But the waiters and waitresses weren't paying as much mind, right, as they normally do. And he was like, yo, what the hell? Nobody's coming around asking me if I want water. I got to keep prompting them to pay attention to me. It's because I'm Black, right? This is what it must be. It's prejudice. And I was like, no, man, this is just Colombia. Right? You're going to have to wait a while. You're going to have to wave them down. You're going to have to, because socially, for them to be nagging you, do you want water? Do you want this? Do you want that? It's rushing. And like, that would be considered rude, right? While here it's considered rude to not pay attention to the diner. So it's little things like that. Also, people are more inclined to like want to kick back and relax in a way. Like there's not like they're not as dedicated to the job, right? Meaning like most employees are working to earn a living so that they can live their life. So it's like, oh, it's 5 o'clock. It's time to go home. Product not done. We'll pick it up tomorrow. Not a big deal. And as an American boss might be like, we finish this when we're done. You go home when we're done. That could be a big culture shock. It'll make you feel like, oh, these people are lazy or these people don't understand hard work. No, they understand how to live. And it's 5 o'clock. They got plans with their friends and family. They're going to go out. They're going to sit. They're going to spend $6 maybe tonight for entertaining themselves with a few beers and a snack and, maybe a burger or something, all for $6. And they're going to have a good time this evening while you're at the office working. For what? Like, what are you working so hard for? Like this, you need to live. They'll tell you things like that. But, so that was kind of refreshing for me, just those differences. So I'm not someone who gets like rattled by cultural differences. I get intrigued by them. I'm more curious about them. Randy, Cartagena is for partying, doesn't have subways. It's mainly a tourist city, not the best infrastructure really for living as a resident. But yet again, they have, plenty of residents, right? Like, I agree with him. And maybe that's what you were asking. What makes Cartagena a weekend city? Medellin's a weekend city too, but Cartagena is certainly a weekend city because people go there to get to the beach, right? Medellin is landlocked. It's in the center of the country, right? So there is no ocean nearby. So if you want to go to the ocean, you're going to go to Santa Marta, you're going to go to Cartagena, Barranquilla, or whatever the coastal cities are. And that's what's going to happen. So you're going to just go there for a weekend. You're not going to spend, 2 weeks or a full week. You might do a full week in Cartagena, but I wouldn't. And it's more expensive than Medellin because it's more of a tourist town. So I think it's scenic. You could, Old Town is small. It's a scenic part where most of the tourists go. good restaurants. You'll have a good time. You can party a little bit, but I think it's just for the city. So that's what I guess Randy was answering that. I'd rather, out of all the cities, I haven't been to Cali yet, but I prefer Medellin so far. Okay, sorry, joined before a bit. What are the sites that you were referring to? I was referring to nomadlist.com and Numbeo. I think Numbeo is spelled like this. Numbeo. So you can see it down below if you're still watching. Yeah, Randy answered your question. How is COVID down there? Man, COVID is COVID. It lingers. It's around. People get it. People die. It's like all the other diseases in the world. Randy is right. There's vaccine distribution. Yeah, there you go. And as a point of reference, Randy is currently living in Medellin. So he's talking firsthand from experience. What about crime? I don't know. I personally don't walk around thinking about crime. I don't know how this question comes up a lot, and I wonder, how is this such a prevalent question? Because I never asked this question personally. I never asked somebody, if I'm going to a city, like, what is the crime like in Panama? Or what is the crime like in Bolivia? I don't even think about it. Like, it's not even really, for me, it's not a thought. I think crime is always going to correspond and correlate with levels of unemployment in young men. So wherever there is high unemployment amongst young men, there is going to be increased crime. I don't care what country you're in. Like the United States has, fairly low unemployment rates. You go into the neighborhoods that are high crime neighborhoods, and what you will absolutely see is a lot of young men who have no jobs. So if you can literally avoid places that have high concentrations of men that aren't working, you will avoid crime. So in Colombia, you do have a good percentage of young men that are not gainfully employed, but they're also not going to be hanging out in the same places typically as a upper class person. The overlap is going to be more rare. And to avoid being targeted, right? Because if a criminal is looking to score, they're going to look for someone that has that's easy pickings, right? By themselves, late at night, with things that look valuable. You're going to be a target anywhere in the world if you're that way. So I would say, does crime exist in Colombia and in South America? Yes. It exists wherever there's major wealth inequality, and it's going to be mostly males that are underemployed. So if you can put yourself in pockets where that's not the norm, you'll be fine. JM, what's up? Randy. Randy has become the ambassador of Medellin. Officially Colombian, as we all know. Workforce is cheaper. Materials are kind of the same. Sometimes more expensive. Rent and purchase price is much lower than the USA, for sure. Oh, how am I missing these questions? KD, do you recommend purchasing real estate in South American countries? Is it cheaper to rent, buy, or build? Okay. My bias is that I'm not, from an investment standpoint, I think it's a bad idea in most cases, right? The property can be cheaper than the equivalent in, in the US, right? So like a nice 3-bedroom condominium in a upper class neighborhood in Medellin might cost you $130,000 to $160,000, right? The equivalent neighborhood in New York, Chicago, Miami, LA is going to be $1 million, right? So I would say it's cheaper in that regards. But at the same token, that $150,000 spend, let's talk about that. And then also there's like fewer lending options. There's not as many mortgage lenders, right? So you're not structuring that payment. It's usually a cash payment. So, or maybe broken out over a year's time, 2 years' time, maybe. So now you're looking at, all right, this $150,000 spend. If you were to turn around and rent that apartment, you might be able to rent it for $600, $700, maybe $800, depending on, the buildings and the complex itself. But I would say $600 to $800 would be what you would expect to recoup on a $150,000 sort of spend in Medellin. So if I were to take the same $150,000 and bought a 3-bedroom house in Port Jervis, New York, I would be able to rent that same 3-bedroom house for $1,400, $1,500. So why would I want to spend $150,000 in a market where the currency fluctuates quite aggressively? At least now that's the case. And I only recoup $800 in rent when I could recoup almost double on the same spend, right? I could spend that same $150,000, buy a property in New York, right? Upstate New York, Syracuse, Albany, where there's some density, Buffalo, you can definitely get homes over there. Rent that out for $1,400, $1,500 a month, even to a Section 8er, right? And then pay $600 a month in rent in Medellin and have $900 a month left over to live my life. So right there, you've already achieved your retirement because you're going to have $900 of spending money, and it only takes $700 to live there. And that's including with your housing expense. So now you've eliminated your housing expense and you still got $900 left over. That's how I would manage that. Now, when it comes to the cost to build, it's a lot cheaper, right? Land costs are cheaper. Labor is substantially cheaper. When you build something in the United States, your labor costs are driving you 60% of the project cost, 70% project cost, typical. Way more than 50% is going to be your labor cost. Material is going to be, the third. Down there, it's your materials that are the 60% and the labor the 30%. Right? So your money is going to go further from, okay, I'm going to do this ground up construction. I got $100,000. What kind of house can I build with $100,000? Right? It'd be a much nicer house than the house that you could build for $100,000 here in the US. So like, if you're looking at, well, what can I get for my money? You're going to get more for your money in those South American countries. But as far as from a ROI standpoint, I would say you're going to get better returns on your US investment. So it's a matter of how you want to approach it. And that is reinforced here. Okay, Nazar question. Okay, as a young 23-year-old entrepreneur who's starting to experience some success, I'm really loving this info. Okay, awesome. What is your business? Absolutely, it's a pleasure for me. I'm glad that there's people who are here watching. There you go, Randy. The mayor of Medellin and the future emperor of Venezuela. JM, I'm looking into starting oh man, I'm sorry about that. I'm looking into starting a non-medical home care agency in Southern California. This state is heavily regulated. I'm still going for it. JM, more power to you. If I were you, I would start with healthcare staffing. Wages are high in California. Spreads are going to be pretty good. People want traveling nurses, like working in California. I would not drive myself crazy with the heavily regulated home care. This is somebody that does both. I would not advise, even though I cover it here on my channel, I'm covering how to start a home care agency because it's actually what I was living at the time. And it said, hey, this would be a good thing to document because people don't talk about this. Let me show you, as a person who's experienced doing this, what my routine, what's happening step by step to getting opened. Okay. And I think I covered everything. I did my survey and stuff like that. So that it got open. I think the next thing that I need to do is like credentialing for insurance, which we're getting paid, and marketing strategies, that sort of thing, so I can continue that series. But it's much heavier to start a home care agency with lower profit margins, with more difficult to manage customers. I don't recommend to my friends or to my enemies to start a home care agency. I make money there. It's served me well, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend healthcare staffing, which is why I've been promoting healthcare staffing heavier on the channel. It's an easier start. Even if you've never worked in home healthcare, it gives you a good foundation for, if you go into home healthcare, at least what to expect from an employment standpoint. The patient care is a whole new beast. So you're going to have to learn and master recruitment, staff management, your whole human resource processes, parallel to managing patients' lives, patients' families, expectations, and the regulations of the state. To me, it's just, it's brutal. So I don't recommend it at all. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. US dollar is 7 of my dollars. I often come to the US and lived in Canada, so I've experienced what the differences are. Awesome. So you think in Trinidad and Tobago, as far as a Caribbean country is concerned, they do fairly well because of your tar pits and the oil production. So like the lifestyle is pretty good in Trinidad and Tobago. But even at the same token, lifestyle costs are a fraction, and I'm glad that you're able to share that. Thank you. Randy with the shameless self-plug. Yeah, Randy is Randy's company is called Freelance Latham. Put your link in here, man. What are you doing? Freelance Latham is technically it's a staffing firm that manages a range of services and provides support to a myriad of companies. So if you need back office staff, clerical administrators, whatever you need, they can help you try to find somebody, and they contract with you to provide you this worker. So you get into a contractual agreement where he manages that employee. He makes sure that employee has, internet uptime, good technical equipment, a place to work, like an office environment, and supervises that person and changes that person if you need a new person. So they handle like the kind of the full cycle of recruitment, allow you to choose from their pool of employees, and then they manage that employee. So it takes a layer of management, at least some of the management off of your plate. So yeah, I do recommend them. The burps, of course. Sorry. I do recommend them. I did an interview with Randy. You could go back to that and see. And reach out to him if you need, like, that young entrepreneur, 23 years old. If you ever read the 4-Hour Work Week, it kind of pays especially if you're earning in USD, it might pay to have, a high quality, low cost employee working overseas. Maybe even bilingual, definitely bilingual, but having a bilingual person may help you because you're servicing a Spanish speaking population or you're selling to a Spanish speaking population, and then being bilingual is a benefit to you. And again, it's at a fraction of the cost of a human resource in the USA. Cool. Okay. I was just looking into Africa on Nomad List, but they want me to buy a membership. Do I have a coupon? No, man, I'm not. I don't promote Nomad List. You were looking into Africa, and Africa is not free information. What do you mean by that? They're trying to have you buy a membership, but I don't work for Nomad List. I don't have a coupon code. I'm not a sponsor. I don't do any sponsorships. I just use them as a resource myself. But yeah, I really don't know. I don't have a coupon code. Try to Google one and see if there's one floating around out there. Okay. Gotcha. Where in Africa do you want to go? Yeah, no Costa Rica with those NYC prices. Yeah, man. Doesn't even make sense. You could go to Tulum, right? You could get an apartment in Tulum, Mexico, where that's even a tourist zone now, and you pay $600 for that. Cost of living will be like, so why Costa Rica? Why is she calling me? I'm gonna have to call her back. Okay. Yeah, that's one of my accountants. Okay, so yeah, no, I think Tulum offers, I think there's better. I mean, that's like Spain prices. Like living in Spain, it's more expensive than living in Portugal, and that's on the euro. That to me, that doesn't make any sense. Personally, I would. Indeed, crime is everywhere, and there's certain things that you could do to reduce your probability of being the victim of crime. Okay, let me see what else we got here. Thank you. Okay, let me just try to answer these questions, and I'll get to my phone call in a bit. Hey, ENTP, I met you in Medellin. I'm literally waiting on my flight to leave, heading to Brazil. Thanks for inspiring and sharing information with us. Yes, I remember. Let me tell you something, Domo. I was eating at a street side restaurant, and he comes over to me. He was like, "You're that guy from ENTP Life, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And let me tell you something. You're the second or maybe third person who's come to me in person, like in random, like in the wild, right? In the wild world. You're the second or third person who's been a subscriber to the channel or viewer of the channel and have ID'd me in public, right? And that's quite impressive because I have 30,000 subscribers. It seems like a small number, but if I'm able to run into people in another country that can identify me, then that means that I'm actually reaching a lot of people. I think I might be knocking on a million views on the channel, which is also incredible. So, I remember you, and let me tell you, when people meet me in person like that, it's validation that the message is getting out into the world, right? You're gonna enjoy Brazil. Brazil it's still like you're moving into spring now. I don't know if you're going to Sao Paulo, Florianopolis, Rio. I don't know which area you're going to. If you're looking for some ideas on where to go in Rio de Janeiro, I got some videos on that. But the weather might be iffy, like temperature-wise. It might be, really warm and nice beach days, or might get a little cold front and then you get wiped out on the beach. But if you're in Copacabana, you're gonna love it. If it's not your first time, if it's your first time, you're gonna love it. If it's not your first time, you're gonna love it. I would recommend kind of hanging out in like more LeBlanc, Ipanema is my flavor, or go down to Baja da Tijuca, where you're going to be more entrenched with more locals and less tourism and what comes along with that. But you're gonna enjoy yourself. You're gonna love it. And thanks for reaching out and watching. What skills do you need to start a healthcare staffing agency? Skills. Okay. You're going to need organizational skills, right? To keep yourself organized. You're going to need good communication skills. You're going to need the ability to negotiate terms and wages. You're going to need some advertisement skills so that you're able to recruit and attract the staff that you're looking for. What other skills should you have? You need to be consistent, natively consistent. But I would say organization skills might be one of the most important. A background in human resources would be fantastic because you would kind of be able to put that hat on, the recruiter hat, the employee management hat. You would be exposed to that. So I would say people who've worked in human resources, people who've worked in customer service roles or in staffing positions, like you were the staff coordinator for a nursing home or something along those lines. I think those positions really prime you for that. If you're a nurse and have worked the agency side, you'll understand how to navigate the system a little bit better. You'll understand the employee type. But that's what I think. And if you're really thinking about it, you can check out my course, Passive Workforce. It shows you step by step how to get through the process. And if you follow it step by step and you do all your assignments, about 75% through the course, you'll be fully open and operational. So, that ranges from $97 a month to $2,000 one-time fee. Different services, so like $97 a month is basic, no documents, no mentoring, no coaching, none of that. And if you're on the premium side of things, then you get one-on-one mentoring from me, and then you get group mentoring in a group of other students. You get access to documents like your employee manuals, policy and procedure framework, your spreadsheets to calculate rates and for both employees and your vendors. So I feel like the premium package is more for people who are newer to entrepreneurship and healthcare staffing in general. And the basic is more for people who have like more business experience, more staffing experience, and they're kind of set up in a way to improvise a little more. So if it's something that you're thinking about, definitely check it out. I always recommend the more expensive one, not because it's more expensive and I earn more money on it, which is nice, but it fills in more gaps and will reduce the the startup time. So if you were to even price yourself at $50 an hour, it's going to save you more than 40 hours of work, right? So it's worth it in that regards. Yeah, Randy's Freelance Latam. Randy is the founder of Freelance Latam. Even if I'm willing to join a franchise-ish company to help mentor me through the process of opening a non-medical home care, man, now you're paying up for access, and then you're paying forever on your production. If you want to do it, go for it. What I wouldn't. I'm telling you sincerely, not because I'm concerned with the competition. I'm telling you because you're gonna feel the pain. It's not an easy business. Gambia, Uganda, cool. And they don't have any information that you could look up. That's paid. Numbio, what would you say is a startup cost for a healthcare agency? The startup cost will be most conservatively, I would say about $2,000. More realistic, 5 to 8, as far as like your initial capital outlay. But the biggest capital requirement is not to set up the business, but it's to float your payroll, because you're going to be getting paid at some later date from the time that you provide service. But those employees are going to be expecting to get paid like next week. So if you don't have enough cash or line of credit or relationships to front your payroll, that's going to be your bottleneck. So the startup cost is going to be your, setting up your entity, paying for insurances, paying your initial legal team, that sort of stuff. So paying for the program, those sort of things are going to be your initial cost. And then you're going to be in business. But once you start to operate, if you're owner operator, you don't have any employees, okay, you don't have any employee costs for admin. You could totally do that. But then your next costs are going to be your employment cost. The people that you staff, because you're going to get reimbursed later than the time the services are provided. Can you give contact information for consulting? Sure. Let me just pull up that link, and I'll link it down below. I'm almost done, guys. Calendly. Where's my Calendly link? I'll have it over to you in 1 second. But yeah, you could book sessions there. And like, even for some people, I had someone book a session that was interested in healthcare staffing. And in that session, I realized that they had more business experience. They were savvy enough to go through the process on the basic membership. And I told them flat out, I was like, look, you should sign up for the basic, because you're going to be able to piece everything together because of your previous experience and knowledge. So, I'm honest in regards to really all things, but when it comes to what I'm selling, I don't try to drive what's most costly. Like, I don't think that's right. I wouldn't want that done to me, so I don't do that to anybody else. So in a consultation call, you may ascertain what is the best path for you. If you're thinking about going home care or healthcare staffing, I might be able to point you, like if you're adamant about home care, I might say, hey, you're adamant about this. Here's the things that you should look out for. Here are some consultants that could help you get set up. I don't help home care agencies get set up. It's too brutal for me to help. No way, not my business. I don't want to do that. So I would say, hey, this is who I can point you in the direction. These are the people that I work with that I trust. And then, if you're really thinking about healthcare staffing, here's what I can do for you. And here's the advice that I have. And this is the cost. Or if you want to figure it out on your own, feel free. Same thing with real estate. You think about investing in real estate, here's what you should know. Here's how you should allocate your money. Here's who you should work with. Here's who I work with. So that's kind of usually the flow of things. Damo Worldwide, hi, I'm glad you remember me. Thanks, man. It's my first time staying for 10 days. In what part of town? Any tips on acquiring facilities for our staffing firm? Facilities? You mean like getting contracts? You got to pick up the phone and call people. I mean, that's how it works. Nikki Charles, what would you say is the startup cost? What? I thought I answered this question. Okay, what would I say is the startup cost? I think it's something I kind of go over in the course. But I'll get whatever. I'll give it up for free. I think what you should look at it's going to all depend on what you negotiate as the payment terms with the facility or the payer, the vendor, whatever you want to call them, the hospital, nursing home, whatever. But I think you should have at least 1.5 times the payment cycle and your expected payroll in cash, right? So let's just say your payroll was going to be $30,000 a month and your payment terms are net 30. Then I feel, to be on the safe side, you should have time and a half to 2 times that monthly payroll amount in cash. So, or at least access to that amount of cash. Because if you were to start, let's just say you were billing weekly. First week, the 1st to the 7th, you did $5,000 in payroll or $7,000 in payroll. You paid the following week, right? If you submit that invoice on the 7th or the 8th of the month after the work shifts have been closed out and worked, you're going to get paid 30 days later, right? If it's net 30 days. They pay you 30 days later, you're now a month down the line, so you had to carry $7,000, $7,000, $7,000, $7,000, and then your first $7,000 payment comes in. Is somebody scrolling in my office here? Huh, interesting. So 7,000, 7,000, 7,000. So now if you have a month and a half or 2 months worth of runway, even if that payer is slow, delayed, they sent you a check got lost in the mail, you're not under pressure like, how am I going to make payroll? Okay. Once your terms catch up to your initial cash outlay, then things start to get better for you because you're not as strapped, right? But if there's a change in payment cycle, if the change in conditions for that payer, slow, holiday happens, that person didn't run their accounts payables because it fell on Monday and that was a Columbus Day or whatever, that might get pushed 1 more week so you get offset. So I recommend at least 1.5 times what you expect your monthly payroll to be. And then, 2 times would be even safer. And of course, consistent with what your payment terms is. So that was an example given a 30-day. If your payment terms are net 90, which it could be for some hospitals, you need more money to flow, right? Because you're going to be paying a nurse's salary and multiple nurses' salaries for 90 days, a whole quarter before you might get a check. That could be, a lot of money. So those are the things. And then, that's the sort of information and some of the logic and the tidbits that are addressed in the course. These questions that come up here are all addressed. There's nothing that I've seen come up here that is not addressed. And it's addressed in order that you should be concerned with that thing. Yeah, check it out. I think, like I said, it's ultimately valuable. I've seen a lot of people start out in the basic and upgrade to the premium. And at least that way you get exposure and say, hey, I didn't spend $2,000 a month. Like I didn't spend $2,000 for this thing. That's a lot of money. Let me just kind of peek in the door and see. And they end up realizing it's worth it to kind of go all the way. Oh, cool. Thank you. Planning a 1-month trip to Medellin. Are there any good tour guides and personal assistants to help me when I land? Email me at info@entplife.com. I got a couple people that could show you around. I know I have a friend who works at a hostel, so she should have some contacts. But email me info@entplife.com. Just, be as detailed as possible in the email so I can remember you and my staff can remember you. And we'll be able to at least point you in a direction. What month are you coming down? Okay, cool. What's the work-life balance like at home care? Listen, man, any entrepreneurial venture as you get started will have a horrible work-life balance. In home health care, you getting started, let's just say you're undercapitalized. I'm not saying you're going to be undercapitalized, but if you're a one-man show, two-man show, you need to do human resources, payroll, and your billing and your financial stuff. You need to recruit staff. You need to place staff. You need to service clients. You need to do initial admissions. You need to establish referral sources. You better be working 16 hours a day to get it done, because you might use the 9 to 5 for service and marketing and building relationships, and then from 5 to 10, 5 to 11, when your phone isn't ringing anymore for normal business hours, you're doing back office work, you're catching up on paperwork, you're running your payroll. That's the life. I don't care what business you're in. If you want your business to really get up and go, you're putting in 16-hour days, probably 6 days a week until you get ahead. That's just the way that it goes. How hard do you think it would be to start a hospital? Man, I'm not even thinking about starting a hospital in Haiti. Honestly, you're gonna be dealing with a lot of regulatory BS. You're gonna be dealing with people stealing materials. I'm sorry to crap on Haiti like this, but infrastructure-wise, it's gonna be a much heavier lift than it should be for a country that needs the help. I'm just not. I wouldn't do that. My friend is Haitian, and she mentioned it's not too hard. Yeah, but it's gonna be hard to collect. Look, I'm gonna tell you a story. My cousin needed to have surgery in Haiti. He went to the doctor's office, or to the surgeon, and the surgeon was like, all right, cool. And he had like a huge testicle infection. Like his balls were the size of like a basketball, right? Sorry for the graphic nature of this conversation, but his balls were swollen. With his swollen balls, the doctor gives him a list and says, hey, man, you're going to need to buy oxygen when you're under the vent so that we can, oxygenate you and make sure we keep your sats up. You're going to need to get this many gauze, the surgical kit, the sterilization kit. You're going to need to get all this crap with your swollen balls, shopping around, trying to source these materials yourself so that I can do the surgery at the hospital. And you got to pay the hospital fee or whatever. This guy who has no job in Haiti is now calling the USA to get some money for help for his swollen balls. This is the reality of what's going on in Haiti. So you want to invest money in building a hospital in a place where there's no payer and the people don't have money to pay for their own healthcare? Oh man, that's a losing proposition. It's needed, but from a business standpoint, I wouldn't do it. Certainly not. I don't even have the heart to, I would end up creating this nonprofit kind of service, and you wouldn't even be able to keep up with the demand and help all the people, because you're gonna have to pay for supplies. You're gonna have to be farming that money from somewhere else. I don't know. God bless you for your thoughts. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining me here at ENTP Life. I think I've gotten through the questions. If you want to book time with me, here's the link, Calendly. Feel free. I don't do that many sessions a month. Don't know how far out I'm booked, so you would just have to check that out for yourself. It's not where I make my money, so I don't give that much time there. But if you want some more one-on-one time, trying to figure out what you want to do, I'm there. I think the sessions are pretty good. I actually have some highlights coming out soon showing you kind of teasers and the benefits of those sessions. And then what else? Stay tuned. I got some really interesting content coming up. I'm actually going back to Colombia this Sunday. I got some more video to film, checking out a couple of new places. It's going to be exciting. And then I come back to get everything together with my family, and then I'm out of here. So again, thanks for joining me here at ENTP Life. Do I think franchises in Latin America, you're going to be earning in the local currency, right? You're going to be earning in the local currency. It's going to be less money, right? So I don't know. I personally, if I were going to invest in South America, I'd be investing in tourism because again, you're getting people paying in USD, euros, in the more stable, costly things, and they're kind of a little sloppy and haphazard with how they spend. That's how people get on vacation. I'd rather get their money, and I would focus on like animal proteins and farming, right? Like funding, maybe partnering with farmers so that they're to build their animal stock, because you know that food in all those countries will sell, and you're probably seeing a 100% ROI, sometimes better on grazing a cow for a few years, right? And labor costs are low. I'd invest in those sort of things. I'd invest in more or less infrastructure that I can monetize over the long term. But like, here's an example: 200 megabytes of internet in Sicily costs 30 euros a month, and that's in Italy, right? It's probably going to cost about the same in Colombia. I don't know if Randy's still here; he could tell you. So even if you own the data, right? Like we're paying like 70, $100, right, for high speed internet here in the States. You're not pay. I haven't paid $30 for internet. I don't know in how long. So when you look at that and you're like, I'm making this. I got to make investments into fiber. I got to make investments into the data center, and then I'm selling the internet at what's reasonable for the local payer. I don't know, man. I just don't. I wouldn't build my businesses there. I would build my support and services there because the cost of that is going to be lower, so that I could farm money out of the higher paying markets. And that's my time. Take care. Peace.